What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. With me today, I have a guest, Alex Hill. We're going to be talking about a little bit about his performance at St. Louis, but also mostly about kind of a recap of what happened at St. Louis, the meta. We'll be looking at a couple of charts of data of what decks we saw at the St. Louis regionals in both day 1 and day 2. Talk a little bit about the work ethic that goes into getting the kind of finish that Alex got there, which was a top 4 finish. Very, very good. And we'll talk about Quarter 3 Standard League Cups and Charlotte, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. So, Alex, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. My name's Alex Hill. I'm from Michigan. I moved to Georgia about, what month is it? February? Like a year and a half ago, whatever. I've been playing Pokemon since, competitive Pokemon since 2005. Since then, I have a regional championship, a state championship. I was top 16 last year. Some other finishes throughout there, and then I help run sixprizes.com right now.
Cool, great. And like I said, you just got 3rd place at the largest regionals ever with Buzzwell Lycanroc.
It was crazy the whole time. It's like, I don't know, it didn't even sink in until afterwards. It's like, oh man, that was like the biggest regional ever. That's crazy.
Yeah, fortunately for the game, I think we're saying the biggest regionals ever. It's like every standard regionals.
Regional now. I mean, every Midwest to East Coast regional.
Yeah,
I think is going to be competing for it for the next at least handful of months.
Yeah, probably just not.
Even, you know?
I don't think Portland will get the numbers because it's so expensive to fly into there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Charlotte should be pretty big.
Yeah,
it's kind of hard to fly in there maybe, but
yeah,
it should still be big.
Okay, so my first question for you, I'm going to pull up the day 1 data that we have here. This data was collected from Arcanine Labs, and I believe Chris Szymanski helped kind of organize it. It says in cooperation, or with cooperation of Chris Szymanski. And I know he did something like that with them for another regionals. So we're going to look at these archetype percentages from day 1. So luckily you were actually in my video discussing what we thought was going to happen at St. Louis. So how did this chart of what actually was played, how did this differ from what you were thinking about going into the tournament?
It's pretty surprising the amount of people who played the high roll decks. I mean, like Magnezone, Vikavolt. And I call them high roll decks because, I mean, if you run hot, you get the turn 2, stage 2, you win most of your games. But like, I don't remember exactly what I said about Metal when I was on, but either before that or after that, I tested that a lot, and I was really trying to make Metal work, really kind of just forcing it, and I didn't think it was very good.
Yeah, in the video,
Yeah.
in the video, I know you were talking about the Metal box as opposed to the Magnezone, and a few days later, you and I went back and forth talking about the Metal box a bit, and we kind of came to terms with, at best, you're still losing to Buzzwell Lycanroc.
Yeah, I'm trying to. The last week there was a lot of Pokemon. I mean, I was on the Six Prizes podcast, your video, and they just played a ton, and so like I mixed it all up in my head. But one of the days I sat down and just played Buzzwell versus Magnezone and Metal Box, multiple different lists of both types, playing Mew, Mewtwo, Dialga GX, like trying anything possible to make the Metal decks beat Buzzwell, and I was at like a 30% win rate with the Metal decks. Like it was terrible.
Okay.
And so like I think that's the other thing is, I thought Magnezone was very bad. Most of the other like top players that I talked to also thought Magnezone was very bad, and so I mean when this picture was published with the metagame breakdown, I think that was the biggest thing. Everybody's like, Magnezone, really?
Yeah.
But I think the rest of it is pretty expected. I mean, lots of Zoroark at the top. Obviously, Espeon and Garb variants were being talked about going into the tournament. Buzzwell was very good. Buzzwell probably played a little bit more than I expected.
Yeah, it had a target on its back.
Yeah,
so...
I didn't really expect it to have that much. I don't know. It didn't even win. I think if it had won Oceania, honestly, I think this would be the metagame chart that I would expect if Buzzwell had won Oceania.
Okay.
I think I would have expected more Zoroark decks, more Gardevoir Zoroark after, because I mean, the deck doesn't really lose much going from Oceania into this, other than like other metal, like the metal decks.
Zoro Guardi we're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it won Oceania.
Right.
Like the metal decks give it like, I mean the metal decks beat Zoroark pretty easily, but like the Gardevoir Zoroark specifically doesn't really have like a significantly worse Magnezone matchup, and it's even winnable with the Gallet, I feel, or even just having the Gardevoir as a way to one shot their big attackers.
Yeah, I've been testing Zoro Guardi a lot, and I was testing Zoro Guardi going into St. Louis, even though I wasn't going, just like, you know, because I'm a meta nerd. I love to see what's going to do well. And Clefairy from Evolutions, like, just helps so much in that matchup.
Oh yeah, that's true too.
You just put
that's a cute tech.
You just that. If you get a Guardi, you just Secret Spring DCE Metronome their Tempest, Meteor Tempest or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, against every Magnezone Dusk main I've played with Zoro Guardi, I've played 5 in testing, and I've won all 5 games against it. And in like 3 or 4 of the games, Clefairy has taken 4 prizes.
Yeah, like I thought the matchup was pretty winnable for the Zoro Guardi without the Clefairy. So I think with the Clefairy, I mean, I don't think it's any worse than 50-50.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it at least.
Yeah, like I think the Gardevoir Zoroark deck being too low, and then the Magnezone Vikavolt numbers being too high. But I think if you balance the rest of that out, I think it is pretty much what I expected. Maybe too much, maybe more Greninja than I expected. But I know I had always said Greninja is better going into this tournament than it's ever been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you just draw well, then you'll probably win most matchups.
So something I wanted to talk about, we're talking about the metal and the Vikavolt a lot. So its success rate going into day 2, the Magnezone success rate is 0% going into day 2 with 100 decks. It was 10% of the meta, and none of it made day 2. So I'm thinking myself it was probably a mix of the most skilled players didn't pilot the deck, and also the deck has a lot of variants, and you need to run super hot with it. Do you think it was a combination of the two?
I would agree with that, except for the fact that 3 or 4 Vikavolts also made day 2. And I think the Vikavolt deck it's a little bit better in a lot of ways because you're not playing out of the hand. But Magnezone is hardly playing out of the hand, not like in this iteration anyways, because you have Mount Coronet.
Right.
So you can basically play anywhere but the hand, you know?
Okay.
Like, Vikavolt is, I mean, going for the deck, and then you put your energies in the discard with the Magnezone. So it gives you a little bit more of a crutch. And I guess maybe it's just that the attacker is a little bit harder to power up. And I think the other problem is people weren't building Vikavolt, or they weren't building Magnezone like you would build Vikavolt.
Yeah, we were talking about that a lot a couple weeks ago in the video before that. These new decks in the first tournament, they hardly do well because it's hard to have the optimal list ready. So that could have definitely been a huge problem there for Magnezone.
Yeah, and it's like I don't know anybody who ran Magnezone, honestly.
Yeah, I don't either, actually.
So that's probably telling to,
like,
I mean, just the fact that the best players didn't play Magnezone, you know.
Yeah. Ho-Oh 45 Ho-Oh decks, kind of surprising, kind of not surprising. I think Ho-Oh was a good call, but I didn't think a lot of people would actually go through with it. What do you think about that?
I don't really like Ho-Oh itself. I know Gustavo played Volcanion, and I played against him twice. I think the matchup is pretty Buzzwole favored, but I think the Volcanion deck, I think like a Volcanion deck with a Ho-Oh focus is better than the straight Ho-Oh deck, the like super heavy Ho-Ohs and Kiawe's and stuff.
Okay.
The Ho-Oh is, I mean, it's super good against Buzzwole, and if you can get too powered up against a Buzzwole deck, then it's really hard for them to respond.
Agreed.
But no, I don't really like. I mean, I played Ho-Oh Salazzle in Hartford this year, and I thought it was terrible.
Okay.
You just don't thin your deck enough, so you get end low.
Yeah.
You either don't thin your deck enough, or you run out of resources. Like there were some games where I was like, well, I'm down to 20 cards. That's good. At least I only get end to 1, and then I draw 2 from the Erangel or whatever. But I only have 2 fires left.
Yeah.
So me actually hitting anything is really difficult. The deck didn't seem like it flowed very well. And just, you can go ahead early, you'll take your 4 prizes, but getting the last 2 is really difficult.
Yeah,
but
I definitely
do agree. It was probably like a pretty good call for the tournament. There's a lot of Zoroark. I mean, Obviously, you want the Ho-Ohs against Buzzwoles. Like metal decks were getting hyped, or at least some talk about them.
Yeah. Okay.
But, I mean,
cool.
As you see, like the Ho didn't translate a lot over. I
No.
mean, two of them cut.
Two of them and Gustavo, or
yeah,
like...
two of them. It looks like two Ho-Ohs and then one Volcanion.
Yeah,
and I imagine Gustavo was the one classified as Volcanion.
Right. Do you have anything else to say about the day 1 meta before we move over to the day 2?
Not particularly.
Okay, so let's move over to the day 2 then. This chart is courtesy of Pokestats. Pokestats at Twitter, they're Pokestats. I'll put a link to their actual website in the link. I always forget which one's their website, which one's their Twitter.
I just go to the Twitter.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Pokestats. If you don't follow them, go ahead and follow them. Super great resource for Pokemon data. So these are the day 2 placements. We had a top 40.
Something 45, 6-ish.
Okay, yeah, top 46, I think. So we were talking about how the decks translated over to day 2 from day 1. There are no Magnezone Duskmane decks, and that was the second highest frequency of an archetype in day 1. There's 4 Vikabulus, so Vikabulu definitely had a better success rate. And you were mentioning Ho-Oh 2 did make day 2. So what surprises, what did you expect to happen that did happen here?
I mean, I think that you look at the top, and Zora Glisspot was played by a lot of top players. Not surprising to see it make that many
absolutely.
And I think I would call Zora Glisspot the 50-50 deck right now. Like, that's been Yveltal for most of its lifetime, and expanded especially. It's been Yveltal Garb and Standard. I don't know what else really qualifies from recent memory, but
yeah, Espeon Garb in recent history.
Yeah, any of the Garb like Espeons and Drampas, I think those are pretty close to 50-50s in the field. So I'm not at all surprised to see this many Zoroarks make it. Buzzwole as well, not surprised. Zoroark, Lycanroc. I think it's not really I think Zoroark Lycanroc is probably the worst of the Zoroark variants right now. So I guess that's pretty surprising to see that be the fourth most, or tied for third most played deck in day 2.
I'd say, for me, Zoroark GX Lycanroc and Zoroark GX Garbodor. I'm not a huge fan of the Garbodor variant yet, so I'd kind of put them at the bottom of the variants for Zoroark. But yeah, Zoroark Elysipod, like you were saying, is definitely... I feel like it's the 50-50 deck. I always find myself playing the 50-50 deck of the format, except when Gardevoir was just the undisputed best deck. And I played that because I felt that there was nothing better. But yeah, I completely agree with everything you said there. So go ahead and continue what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, I was mostly the Zoroark Lycanroc surprises me. I think Glisspot is a better type pairing, especially because you can attack for 1 energy, which is huge in these decks. And I think the grass covers types better than the fighting, even though obviously you want fighting for the Zoroark decks. And if you really want a fighting attacker, I would rather play Zoroark Guardy, and then you can play the Gallade, which also gives you some consistency. I mean, you're playing a stage 2, but the deck sets up fine. It's just a Zoroark deck, really.
Yeah, it sets up much better than you'd think looking at it.
The Zoroark Garbodor deck was a little surprising. Not really for any reason, just because it kind of just came out of nowhere for this tournament. I'd heard of it the night before. I didn't really have a chance to test it, or really the willpower to test anything else at that point.
Yeah.
But then I think the cool thing that from the last kind of fourth of the wheel is it's surprising some of the decks that made it, but it's not surprising that there are so many decks represented. I think the format going in and even coming out of Collinsville is pretty wide open. There's still a lot of exploration to do in the format. How good is this Raichu deck actually? What does Hoopa Toolbox actually lose to? Zoroark counters I thought was really scary. That was something I didn't want to play.
Yeah.
That was one of my potential top 8 matchups.
Okay.
And I was like,
yeah, Zachary.
I don't want to play this.
I think Zachary was a win away from top 8 at one point.
He was at winning in on the last round.
Okay.
And he just has a lot of he has Sudowoodo. I don't There's something else scary in that deck. I don't remember. There's so many different. Oh, Mimikyu. That's what it is.
Okay, yeah.
So he has those 2 attackers to return 1-shot a Buzzwole if he needs to. I mean, the Mimikyu also just hits me for weakness. Like, yeah, it would have been pretty ugly, I think.
Yeah.
I think what I was supposed to do is like not take prizes against it early to activate his counter energies, but
yeah.
Blah blah blah, whatever. I think that deck's pretty cool. Could be good. The Glaceon Garbodor, like how good is that actually against Zoroark decks? Metal Garbodor. I didn't really try the metal deck with Garbodor.
Yeah.
I don't think. I mean, the biggest problem that I was finding was the Buzzwole matchup. So I mean, the Garbodor doesn't really help that. But maybe it shores up your other matchups enough that you win. Because if you win everything else and you only lose the Buzzwole, I mean,
yeah, that's
I only
fine.
played against one Buzzwole in the entire tournament, So even though it's a highly played, it was the most played deck on day one, you can still get by with like, if you only have one bad matchup, I think it doesn't matter what that bad matchup is, other than maybe if you're in expanded, you lose to every single Zoroark deck, you can't take that. You know?
That's every variant though. Like maybe if you just lose to one kind of Zoroark, then you would still be fine by that theory.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so something like that, like you could take that kind of a gamble. So like like Passimian too. It's like I'm sure that smashes Zoroark. Does it beat Buzzwole? Who knows? Does it beat any of the Garbodor decks or anything? So like there's still a lot of stuff to explore in the format, I think.
Yeah. It seems like a really healthy format. Yeah, I'm sure people are going to complain. 8 Zoroark Elysopod decks. It's just a really good deck. I mean, it's a lot different than we saw last year around this time where Yveltal was like the top cut of every tournament, or maybe a little earlier. And I think it was like December, January of last year when Yveltal was just running rampant. And this is really, really versatile. We saw decks do well for their first time here, Raichu Pachirisu, which had been out for other tournaments, but just never popped up because it needed Pachirisu to give it that power boost. Yeah, sorry. And then Glaceon had so much hype going into Ultra Prism. And testing, we all found out that Glaceon Zoroark was not the deck we had hoped it would be. But Glaceon Lapras Garbodor seems pretty cool. And it seems kind of scary to play against if you're relying on trade.
Yeah, I mean, it shuts off a lot of the... the problem with Glaceon is, you lose to Bulu. Oh, you lose to... I don't know, any other, like... I don't know if there's really even other 90Xs that
it would be that much. It would be Bulu and Duskmane, Necrozma, Magnezone.
Yeah, so
basically
you some of the other stuff
ability and your basic is not the ability.
Right. I'm still concerned with that kind of a deck about just like getting hit with like a Lele, but I mean, I haven't even seen his list or looked for it. I haven't even thought about it until now. Actually,
his list is pretty cool.
I mean, if you play enough hammers and you can bounce the energies off the Leles, and like you're probably in a pretty good spot. So that's interesting.
Well, what's cool is Glaceon can hit 90-30. And it spreads to the bench. You have that 30, you have that 90. Most decks aren't going to be able to do something like Acerola and Max Potion in the same time, at the same turn, if any healing. And so while you're stalling with Glaceon in the active, spreading some damage around, not really taking knockouts most likely, you set up your Garbodor and you Aqua Patch some Water Energies to Lapras GXs. And then you just either Glaceon gets knocked out or you retreat it. You have Garbotoxin lock up, and then Lapras just sweeps. That's kind of the game plan.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So that is a cool deck that I hope we see more people experimenting with. I was definitely surprised to see Zoroark Gardevoir. In day one, I was expecting to see more Zoroark Gardevoir. And I was expecting it to do slightly better in day two, but I don't know all of the matchups they hit and everything. But yeah, Buzzwole Lycanroc, I was expecting that to be on the top of the format. And Zoroark Elysopod, I was super iffy on. I was going back and forth. I think in the video that you, me, Russ, and Rukan had, either before the video or during it, I was saying I think Zoroark Elysopod's safe, but it's it feels super underwhelming compared to a lot of things. Yeah. Because we were still worried that Duskmane Necrozma was going to just run rampant and take out all of the Zoroark decks. But I think enough people realized... All the people that did well with Zoroark Elysopod realized that Duskmane was going to be inconsistent, and if you hit one, you hit one, and maybe you would run hotter than they would because you're a Zoroark deck.
And you don't even have to run hot. You can just Gust Magnemite, kill it. They boot up a Magnezone. Gust first impression, knock it out.
Yep.
Then what do? They probably get a knockout or two with the Dustmane, but probably not much more than that.
Yeah. And the two people in top 8 that were playing Zoroark Golisopod with 2/2 Loranis promo. One, I was super hyped to see Loranis promo do well because I've loved that card ever since it came out, but it was just never good enough. Two, it was a really cute idea to like make your Golisopods always one hit Lele with Choice Band First Impression Loranis promo to get easy prizes, and also it was kind of your out to Duskmane Necrozma because you can First Impression for 190, right, with 2 Loranis promos in a band.
Down.
Or Crossing Cut GX would then be able to one-shot Duskmane Necrozmas. Like, if you said you get out the Magnemites, but in the interim they set up a Duskmane Necrozma manually attaching, then you would be able to one-shot it. So I thought that was interesting, and I don't know their thought process on the Loranis promo, but I have to guess that Duskmane Necrozma was something on their mind when playing Loranis promo.
I mean, Duskmane Necrozma has 190, and Buzzwole GX also has 190.
Right, yeah.
So it just gives you, like, it just helps out, like, I haven't actually tested that version of it, but I imagine that it helps out just enough to, like, swing those matchups a little bit. I don't know if it's worth the space to fit in a 2/2 for, like, to take those little percents.
Yeah, I was expecting it to be a 1/1, but then I looked at the list and it's 2/2, and that's kind of a lot of space, like you said.
And I mean, you kind of need the 2 of them so you don't have to commit a Crossing Cut as your only way to get a knockout on these 190 HP Pokemon. But I don't know, it's interesting. In my top 8 and top 4 matches, it didn't really come into play much. So I don't think it's actually I don't think it's really that great against Buzzwole. But I mean, maybe there's other matchups that we're not considering that it's good for, or other situations. So
yeah. Just pretty much 190s, I guess. Ho-Oh, even if we were expecting an influx of Ho-Oh. And like I said, it's just, I guess it could work in theory if you can get it all set up, that you can just First Impression a Lele every turn and win your game like that. Do you have...
that'd be pretty nutty.
Do you have any other archetypes from the day 2 here that you wanted to point out or talk about?
I completely glossed over it when I looked through the quarter of the circle there for a minute with the Zoroark Weavile deck.
Right, yeah.
It's actually funny because I got to the venue and I was talking to like Rahul and I think Sam Chan and Pram, and they were all like, I don't know if they were looking for cards, they were putting stuff together. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they like show me the Weavile. I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, Tord's playing it right now. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, Tord and the Limitless guys are playing it over in what, Malmo?
Yeah.
This weekend or Leipzig? Whatever.
Yeah, Malmo.
Or the same weekend. And I was like, well, okay. I think it's just the same reason that I didn't play Metal at this tournament. I'm like, all right, well, this deck loses to Buzzwole, and like, you can beat Buzzwole if they don't know how to play, you know.
Yeah.
If they put down too many Pokemon with abilities, if they put down the Regirock, they have to Lele, and then they put down an Octillery. Yeah. You can probably blow them out pretty easily. If they put down they play Dark Energies, so they can copy your Buzzwoles, like, they can copy
Trickster GX stuff, right?
Yeah, they can Trickster to copy Absorption, and I'm honestly blanking on...
Knuckle Impact. Yeah, I always forget that one, too. Yeah, I heard Russ called it, I think he called it Knuckle Punch in a video with Chip. Yeah, that one seems to elude everyone. So, yeah, the Zoroark Weavile. Me and my friend... we're testing it the other day, actually. He came over and we played some games, and he was like, I really think this Weavile stuff's cool, but I saw everyone's only playing like 1 or 2 Weaviles in their lists, like, and it kind of just seems like you don't have another attacker. It's just a tech. So we're trying it out with a thicker Weavile line and playing a MUEX to counter the Buzzwole, but it's still not very good against Buzzwole. And like you said, if the Buzzwole player plays correctly, like maybe like 2 Buzzwole, a Sudowoodo, and an Octillery. That's 1 ability on the bench.
Right.
And maybe a Lele if you needed it. Like, we'll call for, you usually need a Lele at some point with some decks. But Buzzwole, you only play 1. So that's not even, it's not out of the question to play a game of Buzzwole without using the Lele, correct?
Yeah, once you get past the first, like, 2 or 3 turns, you usually have no use, or even bench space for the Lele.
Yeah.
The only time you use it is, like, to thin a supporter out of your deck in the late game, or just to hit the very last Guzma or something to win. So Yeah, you usually don't have the Lele on the bench, so there's one more Pokemon without abilities.
Right, right. Okay, cool. I think I covered everything here I wanted to talk about. How about you for day 2?
Yeah,
Okay,
good.
awesome. So my next question for you is, in your interview with Trainer Chip, I watched. If you guys haven't watched that, go ahead to Trainer Chip's YouTube and check out Alex Hill talk about his whole tournament report. But you said in there, and this is what stuck out to me, that you put a lot of work in for this tournament in particular, and it paid off. So, tell me, like, what the 2 weeks or so leading up to St. Louis looked like for you in playing Pokemon in real life, PTCGO, just messaging back and forth with friends, watching videos, listening to other people talk, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I gotcha. Funny enough, Nate, I was just thinking about it when you were saying that. I don't think I played a single game of Pokemon in real life leading up to the tournament.
Oh, man.
It's pretty funny. I mean, I did play with real cards like on Skype a few times.
Okay.
And then I had a lot of TCGO. But, so I mean, I stream, I usually stream 2 or 3 times a week, and I do about 2 hours. So I just say 4 or 5 hours. I was doing a lot of coaching leading into this. I do coaching with usually just younger players, some regularly, some just like when they need some help. And the weeks leading up to this, I mean, I was doing usually 4 to 6 hours of coaching, which is also just playing Pokemon.
Right.
I mean, it's a lot different than when I'm actually testing, because I'm trying to. It's usually like I look at what's being played in juniors and seniors, and I try to play those decks against other juniors and seniors. The funny thing is, what I expected was Buzzwole, so I was just playing a lot of Buzzwole for that reason. So another 4 or 5 hours of coaching there each week. I tested a lot, you know. At different times in my Pokemon career, I've tested a lot and a little, you know, like leading up to the Nationals where I needed to do well to get my first invite. Christopher Szymanski and I played so much Pokemon. Just TCGO for like, it was like during the summer leading up to Nats, so I wasn't really doing anything else.
Okay.
And we just play and play and play. And when I was like in my freshman year of college, I would go over to my buddy's dorm and play and play and play. But like last year, I mean, between getting a job and starting to run 6 prizes, and then going to tournaments all the time and trying to have a life, you know, like I wasn't testing a lot last year. And when I was, it was like only before a tournament. So the fact that I was, testing specific matchups, 2 weeks out, it was really just more than I usually do. Okay. But I mean, I was probably testing like actually testing another 6 or 7 hours. And then most of it was like a couple, like the night where I played against Buzzwole versus Metal decks. I mean, I was probably just 3 hours straight where I just
of one matchup.
It was actually I sat on my computer when I got home from work at 6, and I started playing Pokemon at 10. I remember because I was like 4 hours, and I played 25 games or so. But just grinding over and over again. So I mean, and then I don't watch streams a lot, but like when Azula and Pablo are on, I usually tune in for a little while. Usually just to like joke around with people in chat. But I mean, I'm still watching them. And then I play like online games like Overwatch and PUBG with Azul, Jimmy Pendarvis, Peter Kika. And we don't really talk about Pokemon a lot, but I mean, it comes up sometimes. Yeah. I mean, it's like we all met from Pokemon, you know, that's like the one thing we have in, I don't know, the biggest thing we have in common.
Yeah, that was the basis of the friendship.
Yeah, exactly. And so like it comes up like, oh, what have you been testing? Or like, oh, I've been testing this, it's been pretty good. Or what do you think about this deck? So we don't talk about it a lot, but it comes up every so often. So there's just a lot of Pokemon stuff just over and over again, just being drilled in in that time.
Yeah, that's good. So like you're playing Pokemon online because it's fun and you like the game. You're streaming it because you want to be a streamer. You're coaching because that's like I said, you enjoy Pokemon. You're helping people. And that's also a little extra money. You're running 6 prizes or co-running it.
Oh yeah, that too. So yeah, I'm reading those articles when writers are turning them in like to edit. But I mean, I'm also have to read every article, you know. Yeah, and
like you said, your friend groups. A lot of your friend groups are not only because of Pokemon, but they're based off of Pokemon, so it comes up a lot. So it's good to keep you're kind of surrounded by people who share this hobby and passion with you. So you're constantly kind of talking about it, or at least thinking about it subconsciously. Right. And that definitely helps a lot.
Well, and then the other thing I just thought of, so what, the 2 week, or was it a week or 2 weeks, whatever, 2 weeks, Australia, 1 week before Collinsville, I watched, I mean, like, I usually watch the streams. If I'm not at a tournament, I'm usually watching most of the streams. And I'm usually, like, cheering a friend on, so it makes it easier to watch. But we watched, the handful of us who weren't in Australia, we got on Discord and watched every game. And that was really helpful, too. I know, like, Azul has been doing a lot of VOD reviews, and we were basically doing, like, live VOD reviews of the games going on, and just kind of talking, like, what's he going to do here? What could his play be here? And that was really helpful. I mean, and again, coincidentally, a lot of those games were Buzzwole.
Okay, yeah.
So I was talking with really good players about what the best plays Buzzwole could make, or what the best plays people could make against Buzzwole. So I got to see a lot of the matchups that way too.
Cool.
So the more I think about it, the more just like like the 2 weeks leading into Collinsville was a lot of just drilling in games of Pokemon, watching them, talking about them, and coincidentally just a lot with Buzzwole too.
Yeah, the stars aligned for Buzzwole, right? You said you were coaching with juniors and seniors, and Buzzwole was good in their format, so you played Buzzwole. You were watching streams and commentating and saying what would be good, and it was Buzzwole. You tested metal decks, and Buzzwole beat all of them. So it sounded like Buzzwole came up a lot, and you made the right choice with that deck. So
yeah, kind of just all fell into place like that.
Yeah,
it's like
that's really
it's funny because Buzzwole would not like. There was no point in my testing where there was the only time that I was testing Buzzwole to test Buzzwole was to test it against Greninja. That was the only time that I was specifically testing Buzzwole. Everything else I was testing against Buzzwole, or I was coaching so that my kid, or so that the kids I'm coaching would know how to play against Buzzwole. You know, everything was geared against Buzzwole, except like a little bit. Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I think you mentioned you were testing Buzzwole against Greninja because you wanted to see if the Giratina promo was needed there, or if you could beat it without.
Right.
And I think the verdict is it's like a 50-50 matchup, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's slightly unfavorable, like 40-60, 45-55 without the Giratina promo. I think it's close to auto win with it, but you have the speed and like the math really works out nicely with the Jet Punch snipes, or with Strong Energy Jet Punch Regirock to one-shot a Froakie. You know, all these little like, or only Strong or only Regirock to knock out the Staryu. So the math works out, and you eventually take 2 prizes. If they bench a 2-prize attacker, you just blow it up. And that's usually the last 2 prizes you need to win the game, or the 2 prizes you need to actually get enough prizes to win the game. So yeah, I don't think it's that bad of a matchup without the Giratina promo. And I was like, I don't want to waste the space on this Giratina promo if I don't need it for something, or if it doesn't help me like win even one matchup.
Cool. So my next kind of question, I write some long questions. Sorry about that. So we're talking about kind of your work ethic here. Would you say you had a really good work ethic leading up to Charlotte, to say the least?
Yeah. I mean, leading into this tournament for sure. It's funny because it's like, talk about like my work ethic, but it's been very bad other than up to this tournament for a while.
Yeah. So that's kind of what this question is for. I know, like, so skill is a big factor, luck is a big factor, deck choice, text, deck list. So the confidence and the information that came with all this extra practice, is that the difference between 2 equal skilled players making day 2 or not some of the time?
Yeah, definitely some of the time. I mean, the thing is, I think it only matters if like somebody makes a terrible deck choice, or like you make like egregious misplays. But I think if 2 players both play the same deck, if 2 players both play the same deck and one has more experience, but if they're both good, I mean, they probably have like a lot of the skills that you learn from other formats or playing other decks translate over fairly well. There are a lot of like, I think, minute decisions right now in the game that over the course of a tournament would add up, but I don't think it would add up to be. I don't think it's the difference between like a 9-0 and a 6-3.
Okay, yeah.
It could be the difference between a 7-2 and a 6-3. But largely, I think the difference more is luck. But I mean, if you have the same luck, then obviously the preparation is going to help you a lot.
Right. Yeah. So kind of my follow up on that. have you, so in this tournament you did really well, obviously top four, and you prepared a lot. Have you found yourself being, like you said, that 6-3 just short of day two, and thinking if I was a little more prepared and knew some of these matchups, maybe things would have been different?
You mean like the other tournaments this year?
Yeah, any other
Yeah.
tournaments?
There's one very good. There's one really good example of that. So the very first regional of the year, I played Espeon Garb. A week before the tournament, I played Espeon Garb at a League Cup and won. And I was very high on the deck. I was like, this deck is amazing. I think this deck is great. We tested very little after that because I'm like, it's expanded. It's just a crapshoot. But this deck has outs to like all the top decks. I think it's really good. Blah blah blah. But I failed to think about. I don't really think about, but I guess I was just kind of surprised by Golisopod doing so well at the tournament.
Okay. And what tournament was this? Just so we have
Fort
some
Wayne
reference.
regionals.
Okay, expanded, right?
Yeah, expanded. Had I tested a little bit more, and if I tested the Golisopod matchup, maybe 3 more games, I would have realized. So I played a Flareon from Plasma Freeze, and I was like, this could help me beat Golisopod. But I want to play this Flareon specifically because it's also another non-EX attacker that's good against like Night March or other Vespiquen if somebody's running that for some reason. But the deck had like no way to get Pokemon in the discard pile.
Oh.
So the Flareon was not a very good attacker.
Right. Okay.
It ended up actually being very bad against Golisopod because unless you like really just hit the nuts, but you don't have enough draw to really do that. You'd have to like chorus and hit a bunch of good stuff.
So if you had sat down and maybe played a 3 out of 5 with that deck in that matchup, like a couple days before the tournament, you think you would have realized maybe this isn't the tech?
So I would have swapped to the Flareons. I would have swapped to the Ancient Origins Flareon.
The one that changes the type of Espeon.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so then with a choice band, you one-shot a Golisopod. They don't one-shot you back. You take such a huge swing in the matchup. And I played Golisopod round 1 and lost, and I played Golisopod round 4 and tied. And had my Flareon been the other Flareon, I think I would have very easily won both of those games. And like that could have been a huge difference. And all my friends from Michigan played the deck with me too. There were like 10 of us playing this list, and pretty much everybody finished everybody had at least 4 or 5 wins. Everybody was within a win of points, So it could have been a huge. I think, and Golisopod was huge at that tournament. A ton of top players played it. There were a bunch of like different variants of it. I think at least 10 made day 2. So I'm sure all of us played at least one Golisopod.
Yeah.
And I think the matchup is still fine. It's very winnable, but it's like 50-50-ish. But we made that one little change, then it could have been a whole difference. And I think if you look back at all my regions this year, it's been like, my deck choice at Hartford, I played Hovaslala. I think that was terrible. Daytona was the only one this year that I felt like really confident in my deck. And I played Turbo Turtles. I felt really good. I think it was good for the metagame, and I got a little bit unlucky, went 6-3. So like that's kind of like that's sometimes the luck factor just misses you. Miss the 7-2 by 1.
Yeah.
But pretty much the other regionals that I played this year were like my deck choice wasn't very good, or I didn't practice enough, so I made some misplays. Like I can think back to at least one pretty major, or like maybe not like round losing, but probably game losing misplay in most of my tournaments. So like more practice definitely would have helped there. Yeah. I think just overall, I throughout the entire year I've had everything from bad luck, but really just a lot more bad preparation.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely feel that. Like you said, there's been parts of your Pokemon career where you were testing with friends nonstop and going really prepared into the tournament, and then times like Fort Wayne where you got first place with a deck, thought you kind of had your grasp on it, threw a tech in, and kind of just went in. And I've definitely done that myself, where you have a really good League Cup run with a deck, and you think you know it, so you don't test out a couple new matchups that popped up because you say you'll figure it out, they seem easy, and then you realize, oh, there's one tech I could have put in to completely change things. So I don't think you could ever go wrong with more testing. Just prepare as much as you can. Don't oversight yourself.
It's really, I think the biggest thing is people psych themselves out, or they hear about a crazy new deck the night before a tournament and then switch without testing, or like they test a bunch of games with it. It does really well in 5 games. You play it the next day. You're like, oh, those 5 games were really really good variants for the deck, and now I'm 2-4 at regionals.
Yeah.
It sucks.
We've also seen things like that work out. Like
Yeah, no, we have too.
yeah, like I think Jimmy and Igor played that Drampagarb deck, and they said in an interview like they built it the night before and played like some games with it, and then made top 8 or something. Like we see that kind of stuff happen too.
Mm-hmm. And throughout the history of the game, there's tons of other like, oh, my friends built this deck and they were testing it all night, and then they gave it to me, and then I won nationals. You know, like that's like, I don't know if that's true for nationals, but that kind of stuff has definitely happened throughout the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So from that, I just want to take, you know, try to. I think it's good to gradually prepare, and do it in like a week or two before the tournaments, like leading up, so you don't think you broke the meta the night before and you don't have time to test it. Because I'm sure anybody who's been playing Pokemon as long as you and I have all thought they broke the meta the night before a big tournament, and go in with a pile of cards, you know? So yeah, it's really good to test a little bit at a time leading up, like a week or 2 weeks starting.
And the other thing I like to do kind of regarding that, you know, like making sure that you don't like psych yourself into thinking you broke the meta, is like try to diversify your testing. You know, I think nowadays, especially whenever I find a good, like whenever I have a deck and I'm like, I think this is good, I ship it off to somebody else. I'm like, Christopher, go test this deck out. And he comes back and he's like, it was terrible. I'm like, all right, cool. Like find somebody else who you trust that their games of testing will go well, and just try to get more opinions on a deck. But like once you have a couple of people who are like, oh, this deck is really good, then you probably got something.
Very good advice. So there's 2 more things I want to talk about, and basically the first one is just a bit about how you think new decks will pop up in League Cups, maybe some things we missed, and after that we'll finish it off with some Charlotte Regionals early meta shift calling. So standard Q3 League Cups. I think we're going to see a lot more of the new Ultra Prism archetypes that didn't do well at St. Louis. I think we're going to see them get some points at League Cups. You know, League Cups are smaller tournaments. There's only 4 to 6 Swiss rounds that you have to win like 4 of and then ID into cut, instead of 9 rounds that you have to do well in at a regionals. So I think things like Empoleon, Duskmane, Necrozma, Magnezone, Garchomp, maybe even a Alolan Dugtrio, those decks might see some success at League Cups. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of the reason is that metagames for League Cups are usually a lot more centralized, and kind of region specific. So like, I'm trying to think of a good example that's true. I guess, I mean, there was a time in Georgia at least where like after Australia where there was just a ton of Decidueye at every single cup, you know, which is probably indicative of the metagame. But like, you know, in the West Coast, everybody says the West Coast everybody plays dark, everybody played Yveltal forever, you know, and they're just like little pockets. And I think around the time I got to Georgia, right before, everybody's like, well, everybody in Georgia plays Rayquaza. You know, I think that was, if you were talking about like going into Athens last year.
Okay. Oh yeah.
So like you could find yourself at a League Cup with no Buzzwole.
Right.
And then you're like, well, I'm just gonna bring out my Magnezone deck and smack up all these Zoroarks, you know.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot more I don't know, room for something like that to happen. And then but you also have to kind of keep in mind, like, I was like, well, if you have a deck that beats everything but Buzzwole, you could probably still day to a regional. But if you have a deck that beats everything but Buzzwole, and Buzzwole's like 50% of your League Cup,
yeah, it's a little different.
Because it's only 20 players and like 10 of them are playing Buzzwole, you'd have to get real lucky to do anything at that League Cup.
Yeah, centralized League Cup metas are definitely huge where I'm from. I play in New Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and Vikabulu was huge because Peter Kika was on his Kikabulu kick for Q2, and there was a tournament. Gosh, it was in North Jersey around Christmas time. I think it was the week after Christmas. And I think it was like 30 people, and there were like 8 to 10 Vikabulus there. And so it was Vikabulu like every round. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, you'll definitely see those kind of metas in League Cups where like a third of the meta is one deck, where just really won't ever happen in a regionals.
And so like that's one thing to think about when you're like playing your League Cups, but it's also something to think about when you're like when you see results come out of these League Cups. I mean, if you see, I don't know, Raichu win 2 League Cups, and anywhere, you know, it doesn't really matter where. You don't just think, okay, Raichu's broken, no, it beats Buzzwole, you know, like obviously Buzzwole was the most played deck in Collinsville, so people were definitely playing it this League Cup, you know. You can't like assume things like that, you know. Sometimes the metagame might just work out in a way that some crazy rogue deck like wins a bunch or something.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, from that bullet point I have, basically I wanted to get across the point that you shouldn't be discouraged from playing Garchomp Lucario or Empoleon or Duskmane Necrozma or Raichu if you think it's a good meta call for your League Cup area, you know? Because just because they didn't win St. Louis Regionals doesn't mean they're not going to win a League Cup.
Well, and then the other thing too is like you've said before, like the best versions of these decks probably don't exist yet. Something like Raichu, I don't know. I have no idea what's even in the deck.
Yeah,
like,
I couldn't tell you.
Let alone, like maybe if you add 2 Mew EX and a Mr. Mime or something, maybe then you just smack Buzzwole. I don't know. I don't think that's true, but like stuff like that, you know, there are definitely ways you could improve these decks, especially now that we have a more defined metagame.
Still super wide open, but a little more defined.
A little bit more.
We still know that Zoroark is at the top, and but there's still room for other things.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last thing, I've started preparing for Charlotte Regionals a bit. And started doing my testing because I'm not going to Costa Mesa, and I only have like 1 or maybe 2 League Cups in my area before Charlotte. So I've already started my testing, and I'm sure a bunch of people have. How do you expect the meta to shift from St. Louis to Charlotte? And do you foresee Buzzwole, Lycanroc, and Zoroark variants staying at the top of the meta?
I don't think the meta is going to really shift much overall. I think, yeah, Buzzwole, Zoroark, Golisopod will still be probably the most played decks. Kind of the problem is that I think we basically have a little bit of a triangle format between Zoroark, Golisopod, Buzzwole, and Volcanion. Like Buzzwole beats Volcanion, Volcanion beats Golisopod, Golisopod beats Buzzwole. I mean, like those matches can go the other way, and like hopefully, like maybe somebody has like some cool text or something that can like make one of the decks on the triangle definitely beat all the rest of them every time. And the problem is that those 3 decks are kind of like oppressive and beat the rest of the decks. So like at least 2 of them probably beat any other deck in the format.
Yeah, being Zoroark, Golisopod, and Buzzwole, Lycanroc, right?
Yeah. I guess as I'm saying this, the logical answer is that Volcanion will go up because I think it's pretty well positioned. I think the matchup against Buzzwole is pretty bad, but maybe you can do something to fix that. Otherwise, I think like there's some room for Psychic Pokemon to do something, either the Zoroark Garbodor or like an Espeon Garb something. Okay. I think you need a better way. I guess the Zoroark Garbodor deck should beat other Zoroark decks. I mean, that's kind of the point of like, first ballooning your own dude. So like, it should beat that. I'm unsure if it actually even beats Buzzwole. I haven't tested it at all.
I haven't either. I've played against it a little bit on PTCGO. I actually just beat it with Buzzwole Lycanroc on PTCGO, but it looked like it was a net decked version of the one that's been going around that did well at St. Louis. But again, I can't guarantee it's PTCGO, so I can't guarantee the person was playing it optimally. But as long as you got like, as I got a strong energy on my Buzzwole and then started piling up on a Lycanroc on the bench, and I was pretty okay. Like, I just Guzma'd up Zoroarks and 2-shot them with Jet Punches while I was spreading onto the bench.
Yeah, and if you don't put too many items in your discard pile, you don't get swept.
Yep.
Do they play the attacking garb? I think they do, right?
They do. They play 3 or 4 Psychic Energy.
Yeah. Yeah, so, like, there's potential that could beat Buzzwole, and then, like, it should be the Zoroark decks, and then it could be Volcanion, you know? I think Espeon is pretty interesting, but I would want some better way to beat Zoroark decks.
So my Espeon Garb is one of my favorite decks that have come out in like the recent years. I absolutely loved it, and I would love for it to be really good. But I've been testing it a lot, and just the lack of draw power and the inconsistency. Like, the problem is you try to control the game, right? And against any Zoroark deck, you're trying to control the game, run them out of resources, lock their abilities. But if they get around that, you have like nothing to do.
Yeah, you're an Espeon that's trying to swing into them for 10 damage a turn and confuse them.
I played like 3 or 4 games of Zoroark Golisopod versus Espeon Garb. I was on the Zoroark side, and anytime I hit a Field Blower, it was like, well, I'm going to draw 6 extra cards this turn. I want to Enhanced Hammer that. Your Parallel City's gone. I'm going to bring up your Garbodor and kill it so you can't just reattach a tool next turn.
Yeah.
Like, it kind of all falls apart really quickly if you miss controlling for like 1 turn. And
I'm gonna ace a roll of the damage or the confusion away, or I'm gonna I don't know. There's just so much stuff that's bad for it.
So on paper, Espeon Garb is really appealing, just because you can control and lock. But then Zoroark only needs like small glimpses of a win to get there.
They just need that one little window, and then they probably already took at least 2 or 3 prizes earlier too. So.
And what else were we saying? Oh, Zoroark Garbodor. I think if I was going to play a Garbodor deck, Zoroark Garbodor seems pretty good because you have the locking of a Garbodor deck, but the draw power of Zoroark. And that's kind of the problem for me with Espeon. There's no draw power. So I'm definitely going to look a bit more into the Zoroark Garbodor deck. It's super interesting, and it seems pretty powerful.
I honestly think, like, the 3 in the triangle I talked about and, like, those 2 are probably the only ones that have a great chance, other than, like, something that's rogue. I don't think any of the other, like, I don't think Zoroark Lycanroc will do well. I don't think Vikavolt will do too well. Zoroark Gardevoir just doesn't seem too well positioned right now.
The thing for like, Zoroark Gardevoir, like, I'm sorry, Zoroark Gardevoir, it doesn't, I can't find a ton of bad matchups for it, is the thing. It seems like it kind of has a lot of 50-50s and a couple slightly unfavorables, a couple favorables. It does have the inconsistency problem because of the rare candies, but you play 4 Zoroark and puzzles.
Yeah.
Have you done any testing with Zoroark Gardevoir? I know you, like, leading up to St. Louis, we've already got there's a lot of Buzzwole Lycanroc for you.
I mean, I played it against Buzzwole like 1 or 2 games, and I played it against Metal Deck, I think. Okay. So I haven't really like tested with it a lot. I've just played against it a decent amount. I played Kyle Save the House round 10 in Collinsville. I think I should have won all 3 games.
I watched it on stream, yeah.
Yeah, I got kind of unlucky the first game, and I mean, I got unlucky the whole set. I missed like all 3 Max Elixirs in game 3.
Yeah, the streamers were talking about you missing Max Elixirs all day.
Oh man, that's pretty funny. But yeah, I don't think that match was very good. So it's kind of like I'm at the point where like if I have something and it's not beating Buzzwole, then I don't see any real reason to test it.
Right. Okay. I do think Zoroark Gardevoir is something to keep an eye on. Like I do think it'll show up, and I do think it's good.
Oh yeah.
I just recently like switched. Zoroark Golisopod is my top dog right now. I took Russell's list and made some changes he suggested from his St. Louis. Like I think he posted that, try a max potion and stuff. And the list is really good and I like it. But I also really like the overbearingness of Zoroark Gardevoir when it gets set up.
Yeah, the Zoroark Gardevoir is like the high roll of Zoroark decks. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you get that perfect setup, you're gonna win. Yeah. Like Zoroark Golisopod is just gonna set up the same way every turn. It's gonna swing for 100, 120. It's gonna Acerola. It's gonna do it again. There's not a lot of comeback potential. I mean, you're not swinging for big knockouts. You don't have big HP to like survive hits. All the things that Gardevoir brings you, but none of the inconsistency. So.
And the last one I wanted to bring up that you just mentioned, Zoroark Lycanroc. So I would agree that Zoroark Golisopod has better matchups, but Zoroark Lycanroc appeals to people a little differently because it does have the one-shot potential that Zoroark Golisopod is missing. So I do expect that Zoroark Lycanroc will be played, but what exactly do you think its is stopping it from being the top Zoroark deck?
I
Is
think
it the one energy thing?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, there's one reason is that it doesn't attack for one energy.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that is a big
it's like,
thing though.
It's like something you have to play against Lycanroc, and I think it's really just like if you gust down the Rockruff with an energy, they're so far behind. Even like in Buzzwole, even if you snipe 30 to it, then they have to evolve it or it dies. So then you waste their chances to use the Lycanroc, and then they're kind of like, and then they're sitting there with another two prize Pokemon on the bench.
Yeah, it's definitely if I'm playing against Buzzwole Lycanroc, I would rather be playing Golisopod any day.
Oh,
like
easily, yeah.
That's a no-brainer. And if we're looking at another tournament where Buzzwole Lycanroc is tier 1, then I think that's a smart thing to say that we'll see more Zoroark Golisopod rather than more Zoroark Lycanroc.
Yeah, I think we should for now. Unless, I don't know, we need some big innovations to Zoroark Lycanroc, I think, for it to be top dog right now.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thank you for doing this little discussion with me. I think we covered a lot of interesting points. Yeah. Would you like to make any shout-outs before we end the video?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you check me out on Twitch. I stream. My Twitch is Team Polyswag. But the best way is just to check out my Twitter. Follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/KazamBolt. And I always tweet out when I'm going live. And then check out 6 Prizes, the best way to support me and a bunch of great writers. And if you don't want to do testing, then you can read about our testing.
Nice. All right.
I mean,
cool.
you probably should test yourself, but it's a good supplement.
Yeah, we suggest testing on your own. And I did put your Twitter at right above your name. No spaces, right? Just Kazambolt. All right, cool. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to Celio's Network. Check me out on Twitch, also Celio's Network. And if you are in need of PTCGO codes, my sponsor is Guardian Gaming, TCG.com, and you can get PTCGO codes there. So, yeah, that's all we have to say. And thank you guys for watching this video. I'll see you next time on Celio's Network.